You're listening to Signals from the Core, a podcast about adventuring in the core sector of the Mongoose Traveller 2nd Edition role-playing game. This is where the bureaucracy is dangerous, the nobles are lethal, and where power, paranoia, and prestige collide. I'm Captain Aurelius. I'll be your host. In each episode, we explore the tangled heart of the Third Imperium through original story hooks, people of interest, encounters, locations, and the tools you need to bring high-stakes, low-trust campaigns to life. If your crew is headed to the throne world, buckle up, because here in the core, secrets don't stay buried. Not for long. Today's episode dives into the nobility of the core, how the moot, salons, and rival houses shape Imperial intrigue, and how travelers get caught up in those currents. We'll also debut 3 new segments. The Referees Workshop, where we focus on some of the skills and mechanics that matter most in core play. A System Spotlight, where we examine one of the worlds in the core, close up. And finally, Core Creatures, where we showcase a life form from those worlds. But first, we've had some emails. I've had a number of people suggest that I find an easier way to make some of the material in this podcast available for download, whether that's a website for publication on DriveThruRPG or by starting a Patreon. And all I can say is, I'm working on it. I should be building a website soon, and while it's still a bit too early to think about listing my material on DriveThru for sale, I suppose I shouldn't rule it out. It honestly never occurred to me that anyone would ask or be interested, so that was a nice revelation. Thank you to everybody who suggested it. Richard sent a note telling me he's learning a lot about ideas he'd always thought would be cool, but had no idea how to run. I'm glad it's helping. He also had a couple of great suggestions, one of which is utilizing the show notes of these episodes to greater effect, which I admit I've been embarrassingly remiss in doing. So, thank you, Richard. James wrote in to say he's often played Traveller through the lens of a space Wild West, and the ideas I'm discussing, focusing on core space as a setting, are opening a world of creativity for him. Thank you, James. That's exactly what I want to hear. If you'd like to share your thoughts with me on the show or any of your ideas for it, drop me a line at coresignalsmail@gmail.com. You'll find the address in the show notes. And now, on with the episode. The nobility of the core are the oldest bloodlines in the Imperium. Silean dynasties trace their titles back to the dawn of Cleon's empire. Villani nobles boast lineages reaching into the First Imperium itself, a pride the emperor encourages. Chenastan patricians carry hauteur and ceremony, while the nouveau elite of industry subsectors wield fresh fortunes to claim influence. Even alien nobles hold patents, reminders that at the center of human power, the Imperium is not purely human. They rarely move in harmony, but together the nobility form the lattice that holds the bureaucracy of the Imperium in place. At the heart of it stands the Moot Spire, the tower that pierces the skies of capital. Here, barons, counts, dukes, and marquises send their voices into the chamber of record. The Moot's only formal power is the dissolution of the Imperium, a nuclear option never exercised. But in practice, it does far more. Its committees draft reports, its councils advise the emperor, its debates shape the tone of law, trade, and diplomacy. If the emperor is the executive, the Moot is the advisory chorus, drafting the reports and framing the arguments that give shape to imperial policy. But here's the detail that matters for your table. Nobles themselves aren't always present. They send proxies, heirs, family members, or trusted associates. A count's daughter might sit on the floor in her father's stead. A duke's attaché may draft the report that shapes imperial policy. For travelers, this opens doors. To confront a duke directly is perilous. To deal with a proxy is an entirely different encounter. You can negotiate, mislead, or even defy a proxy in ways you'd never risk with the noble themselves. That proxy holds sway, but always under the shadow of their noble's name, and we can't forget that. For referees, this is where the moot comes alive. Populate its councils with sons of marquises, cousins of archdukes, ambitious aides eager to prove themselves. Fill the galleries with committee hearings, procedural wrangling, and debates over trade routes, defense priorities, or succession claims. The Imperium insists planets govern themselves, but in the Spire, policy is orchestrated from afar. Strings are pulled, subtle shifts ripple outward, reaching worlds and subsectors that never see the moot's floor. The Emperor commands, but the core nobility shape the context in which his commands are given. A single line in a report may move fleets. A snub at a reception may ignite a feud lasting decades. A Proxies error may cascade into a dynastic crisis that sweeps the travelers into the service or into the crosshairs of powers they barely understand. While the Moot Spire is full of ceremony, it's also rife with intrigue, calculation, and the eternal game of precedence. And in that game, every traveler is a piece on the board, whether they know it or not. To understand noble politics in the core, you have to start where the work is done. In the Spire, where bureaucracy and ceremony shape imperial reality one document at a time. Let's look at the business of the core. It's a bureaucracy of committees and councils, each drafting reports, vetting proposals, and shaping how the Emperor understands his realm. His judgments are influenced, often heavily, by the voices echoing in the Spire. The business here is slow and deliberate. Weeks vanish in drafting a statement of position, months in wrangling the language of a report. Yet the stakes could not be higher. A single word altered in the report can decide whether a world receives a starport upgrade or languishes for generations. A carefully phrased recommendation may see a subsector reinforced or left vulnerable. These decisions ripple through the Imperium, unseen by common citizens, but felt in every port, garrison, and ledger. Sessions built around committee reports and Imperial briefings are about showing the players that in the core, the smallest word in a memo can decide the fate of worlds. The emphasis is on how tiny procedural details can trigger massive consequences. Referees should highlight the mechanics of influence through bureaucracy. A session might hinge on the travelers escorting a testimony, curating a report, or altering a draft. The, quote, adventure isn't in the paperwork itself, but in the obstacles thrown at them. Rival proxies, bureaucratic inertia, or threats of sabotage. This makes admin, advocate, and diplomat as central as gun combat or pilot, giving skills often overlooked in frontier games real dramatic weight. Lean into the drama of slow process, high stakes. The tension comes from the ripple effects of a file delivered, a phrase inserted, or a report secured, as those small acts shift fortunes across entire subsectors. But bureaucracy is only part of the game. Step outside the chamber floor, and you find the salons, receptions, and committee rooms where gestures and whispers carry as much weight as any decree. Now we'll look at the theater of influence. Behind the grandeur lies constant maneuvering. Sessions may look like ritual to outsiders, yet every introduction, every seating chart, every line drafted in committee is a contest of influence. For referees, this is fertile ground. It's not about passing legislation, it's about the tone and momentum of imperial policy and the way nobles maneuver to shape it. The committees themselves are where much of the work is done. They summon testimony, draft reports, and frame the questions that land on the Emperor's desk. A single phrase in the record can shift subsidies, redirect fleets, or validate a noble claim. The official reports are only half the story. Behind them are rival drafts, stolen notes, and whispered edits that never see daylight. This is where the travelers feel the pull of politics without ever stepping onto the chamber floor. Beyond the Spire, intrigue spills into salons, courts, and estates. Noble houses are bound together in a web of rivalries, alliances, and debts that rarely stay contained. A patent under review can throw an entire subsector into uncertainty. A contested inheritance can draw rivals into open feuds. Rumors whispered at a reception can shape reputations that decide who rises and who falls. These disputes ripple outward, reaching the ports and trade routes where travelers operate. This is the backdrop referees can lean on when setting adventures in the core. Errands and contracts are never simple transactions here. Every delivery, every escort, every secret exchange might touch a larger rivalry. The travelers may think that they're solving one problem, only to find they've shifted the balance of power for an entire house. In the core, the smallest actions cascade outward, connecting to commerce, fleets, and judgments of the Imperium itself. Sessions here should feel like political thrillers dressed in noble regalia, but with deadly stakes. The players move through salons and committee hearings instead of loading docks. It's about the social battleground and private negotiations. Frame these as arenas of influence where travelers are constantly tested. Adventures can be staged in social set pieces, a reception where alliances are displayed in who escorts who, a committee chamber where rival drafts circulate, or a gala where rumors can undo weeks of maneuvering. Sessions can pivot between social intrigue and practical tasks. Guarding a scholar, testifying in committee might lead to chasing down a forged rival report. Hosting a proxy at a salon may turn into a stealthy hunt for who's spreading that heinous rumor. The payoff comes from showing the travelers that ceremony is never just ceremony. Every invitation, every seating order, every whispered aside is a battlefield where fortunes are won and lost. Beyond the salons and committees are the houses themselves. Dynasties that clash, cooperate, and scheme in ways that stretch back centuries. Here we'll take a look at the drama between the houses. The nobility are bound by duty to the emperor and the Iridium throne, but that doesn't mean they all move in harmony. Rivalries simmer, some centuries old, others sparked only yesterday. A Chenastan baroness may sneer at the provincial accent of a count whose family rose from the Spinward Marches. A Villani duke may dismiss an industrial magnate as an upstart, while the magnate plots to eclipse him through commerce and patronage. Even alien nobles, respected yet often treated as outsiders, must navigate prejudice. Every house carries its pride, allies, and grudges. Together, they form a society as combustible as it is refined. Alliances are forged as easily as rivalries. A marriage unites houses and reshapes power in a subsector. A committee partnership may tilt imperial policy. A carefully chosen patronage of an artist, scholar, or scout veteran can bind houses together. But alliances in the core are rarely permanent. Today's ally can be tomorrow's rival if precedence is questioned, a patent challenged, or an insult delivered at the wrong reception. Stability is an illusion maintained only through constant negotiation. For travelers, these rivalries and alliances are both peril and opportunity. A crew could be hired to deliver a gift that seals a marriage pact, or to intercept a rival before it arrives. They may act as neutral couriers between houses that cannot be seen to speak directly. They may guard an heir attending a moot session while rivals watch for missteps. Or they may find themselves pawns, caught in a feud because their trade routes or contracts align them with one side over another. Sometimes the most dangerous missions come from quiet maneuverings. A proxy may plead with the travelers to uncover who's spreading rumors that threaten their house's honor. A marquis might summon them to host a gala aboard their ship, drawing rivals into close quarters where negotiations unfold away from the spire. When a dynastic crisis erupts, a patent revoked, or an heir discredited, travelers may be swept into the aftermath as agents, investigators, or scapegoats, depending on who needs them most. For referees, the key is showing how every choice has consequences. A refusal to take a side can be read as an insult. Favoring one house ties the travelers to that alliance for years to come. In the core, nobles play the long game. And once a crew is on the board, they may discover that they've stepped into a rivalry that began long before they were even born and will continue long after they're gone. So, taken together, what do we see? The core sector is a web of power where bureaucracy, ceremony, and rivalry are the strands referees can use to build adventures. Each one offers a distinct flavor, and each one can carry travelers into situations that feel unlike any they'd encounter on the frontier. The Moot shows how bureaucracy itself can be a battlefield. Committees, reports, and procedures are the weapons, and the skills of admin, advocate, and diplomat become as sharp as any blade. Here, the game is about small acts that trigger vast consequences. The delivery of a single testimony, the inclusion of a single phrase, the delay of a single docket. The salons and receptions show the stagecraft of power. Alliances are telegraphed in who enters with whom. Reputations are shaped in whispers, and fortunes rise or fall based on what happens at a gala or in a hearing. These are social arenas where ceremony is never empty, and where the travelers themselves can become pieces in the performance. And the rivalries between houses show the scale of the stakes. Marriages, inheritance, precedents, and old grudges shape every decision. Even the smallest errand can draw a crew into contests that have been running for centuries. To accept one contract is to risk becoming bound to one faction for years. To refuse may be read as an insult. In the core, neutrality is rarely an option. For referees, this is the great opportunity of running games in the heart of the Imperium. Sessions here should feel like being caught in the currents that flow deeper than the travelers can see. The players may start thinking they're on a delivery, an escort, or a favor for a patron. But they soon discover they're entangled in a contest of influence that stretches across worlds and subsectors and woven into rivalries that began long before they were even born. And now it's time for a segment I'm calling Referee's Workshop, where we look at some of the rules, skills, characteristics, or mechanics that can help shape gameplay in the core. In this episode, we'll look at a skill that's easy to overlook on the frontier, but indispensable here. It's the admin skill. Admin is one of those skills people overlook until they need it. It sounds like filing, clerks, and forms. But under the shadow of the Moot Spire and across the ministries of capital, admin is power. It's the oil in the Imperial machine. In a place where precedence is law and process is scripture, the difference between days of delay and an hour of progress can decide the fate of a world. Think of the Imperium as a lattice of permissions. Noble patents, megacorporate concessions, ministry circulars, starport regulations. These are threads knotted together over centuries. Travelers without admin get tangled in them. Travelers with admin learn to pluck the right thread and make the whole web move. Picture this. You need an audience inside the spire. The clerk says the Duke's proxy can see you in 3 weeks. A calm breath, a courteous bow, and an admin check at difficulty 8. Success means you cite the correct order of precedence, reference yesterday's addendum, and attach your patron's docket number. The queue parts, your name appears on this afternoon's agenda. The committee will hear you after lunch. Failure, though, leaves you stranded in the waiting list, and possibly flagged for further review by an overzealous clerk who now wonders why you're pressing so hard. At the starport, bonded freight sits in cold storage while deals wither. A stamp is missing. A serial number is transposed. Another difficulty 8 admin check assembles the right forms and routes them to the right inspector. Success turns what could have been another 6 weeks of delay into a same-day release. Crucial if your cargo is time-sensitive or if something delicate rides beneath diplomatic seals. Failure means days lost. contracts slipping away, and perhaps the suspicion that your documents were rushed or forged. You want sidearms in the Spire? A restricted sensor suite on a civilian yacht? Admin is the key that turns the lock. Quote the regulation, file the exemption, cross-reference the directive, succeed on an admin roll, and you walk through the checkpoint while others argue in the corridor. Fail, and you're the ones left standing outside, watched by security who now have your names on their lists. But admin isn't only speed. It's leverage, too. In the Moot, a rival's testimony could tilt a sector's fortunes. You don't threaten them. You file a question, request clarification, or note a missing certifying signature. A difficult admin check at 10 or better defers their testimony until after the vote. Success buys your patron precious time. Failure alerts the chamber to your interference and leaves your patron scrambling to explain the delay. A megacorporate adversary presses too hard. You don't draw a blade, you drown them in paper. Counter reports and compliance reviews blossom overnight. Another admin check at difficulty 10 ties their staff up for 1 to 6 weeks, depending on another die roll. Long enough for your patron to secure the contract. Success buries them in red tape. Failure tips them off, and suddenly their lawyers are filing countersuits against you. And sometimes the cleanest blade is a clerical correction, a supply order quietly misrouted, a convoy retasked. The fine print yields to those who can read it at speed. Success means resources flow your way. Failure means your fingertips are discovered in audit trails. Inside the Spire, admin is as sharp as any dueling sword. Committees don't move without reports, and reports don't exist without clerks to draft and file them. A marquis's aide might hire you to make sure one phrase survives the edit war. Priority allocation to Rimward Corridor, an admin check at difficulty 8 keeps that line in the minutes. Success secures escort tonnage for an entire subsector while another waits its turn. Failure strikes it from the record and raises questions about who was meddling in the drafts. You need a voice on the floor? Recognition follows procedure. The chair calls speakers by rule, and rules can be navigated. A successful admin role secures a speaking slot when allies are present and rivals have stepped out to take a call. Failure leaves your patron's voice unheard, while their rival takes the floor unopposed. Beyond the Spire, admin remains a force multiplier. A gravely ill passenger needs to disembark at a Class A port immediately. Customs demands forms. Medbay insists on waivers. A successful admin check clears the obstacles, turning a tragedy into a rescue and earning the gratitude of an influential contact. Failure means the passenger dies waiting, and the crew may find themselves blamed for the delay. At a corporate bidding conference, admin cuts through endless protocol to secure your patron's presentation slot while competitors are still arguing over paperwork. Success gives them the stage. Failure makes them miss it entirely. In a ducal court, admin keeps you from embarrassing your employer, filing motions at the exact moment tradition requires, knowing when to stand, when to bow, and when to remain silent. Success honors your patron. Failure insults their peers. Referees should treat their bureaucracy like a battlefield. Let admin roles buy time, open doors, and reframe scenes. Let failures matter. A missed check doesn't end the story. It invites countermotions, leaks to the press, extra scrutiny from auditors, and the sudden attention of a house that wonders why you are in their files in the first place. Success should feel like a corridor opening in a crowded palace. Failure should feel like that same corridor filling with polite enemies. In the core, power is never shouted. It's arranged, curated, delivered with impeccable etiquette, and documented in triplicate. Put admin on the sheet, next to gun combat and pilot and make it sing. The travelers who master it don't just survive capital. They become players in the game the nobility has been perfecting for centuries. And now it's time for a system spotlight, where we take a closer look at one of the worlds in the core. Today, we turn our attention to Nimluine, a world of endless industry and poisoned skies. Nimluine is in the Amoros subsector of the core, and it's a world that hums with energy and groans under its own weight. The stats are clear enough. Starport B, size 5, atmosphere 7, hydrographics 6, population A, government 6, law level 5, tech level E. To decode that string of digits is to see a planet both blessed and cursed. Nimluine is small, just 8,000 kilometers across, with a low pull of less than half a gravity. Its surface is split between broad continents and wide yet shallow seas, with coastlines that stretch for thousands of kilometers. The great cities of Nimluine blanket its shores and sprawl deep inland, filling the land with crowded belts of housing and vast industrial basins, endless belts of factories and tenements stretching from one horizon to the next. The air is technically breathable but tainted. Filters are as common here as shoes elsewhere, because decades of unchecked industry and billions of lungs pumping carbon into the sky have left the atmosphere here laced with poison. That is Nimluine in miniature. A world whose staggering industrial might is built on the backs of billions, and where the price of prosperity is in the air itself. Many citizens still live beneath the tainted sky in the urban slums of the outer cities, their lives measured out in filter masks and work shifts. Towering high above are gleaming arcologies that rise like glass fortresses, sanctuaries of clean air and privilege, home to the oligarchs who shape Nimluine's destiny. The middle class dwell in the domed undercities just below the arcologies, though their filtration systems and air ducts strain to fully cleanse the particulate matter from the toxins outside. The population, tens of billions strong, strains against the limits of Nimluine's sprawling continental cities and industrial belts, pressing outward across every habitable stretch of land. It is the very definition of its trade codes: high population, industrial, and high technology. Endless assembly lines turn out robots, labor drones, and servo machines, their casings stamped with Nimluine's mark. Factory cities churn out cybernetic and biotech augments by the millions. Eyes, limbs, organs packed into sterile crates for shipment off-world. Colossal plants forge fusion cores and spin out superconductive spools, driving the reactors that keep Nimluine's vast industries alive. Every factory, every housing block, every shipyard is fed by this endless hunger for power, a cycle of energy and output that stains the skies and its seas. Though Nimluine's oceans are mostly shallow, its industrial reach extends even beneath the waves. One vast trench cuts into the planetary crust, a cavernous rift where deep-sea rigs dredge up lanthanum nodules and exotic crystals under crushing pressure. Food for the world's furnaces to spew out exotic alloys and crystals, the bones and nerves of the Imperium's technology. It is treasure at the bottom of the sea, vital to jump drive production and manufacturing of gravitic systems and advanced weaponry. The Navy's starships draw heavily on Nimluine's production, and its consumer markets rival those of any core capital. But the sheer weight of numbers creates constant friction. In the underlevels of Nimluine's megacities, there is little room, little privacy, and endless demand for work and food. And so the Imperium watches carefully. Nimluine is no longer allowed to govern itself freely. Its official government is classified as captive government, authority imposed from without. In practice, that means the world is ruled by Duke Talon Caldera, who governs directly in the Emperor's name. Caldera is no cartoon tyrant, though. He rules pragmatically, balancing imperial interest with local realities. But his presence is a reminder that Nimluin's billions do not get the final say in their own fate. Opposing Caldera, or perhaps orbiting him, is Count Darius Andaris, scion of an industrial dynasty and head of a powerful bloc of oligarchs. Andaris commands the allegiance of factories, technocrats, and financiers. His faction is significant, nearly as strong as Caldera's imposed government, and popular among workers who see him as a modernizer. A third faction exists too, though it's weaker. A religious autocracy led by a messianic preacher, Jariah Ezrak, who claims Nimluin's poisoned skies are divine judgment. The sect has few supporters, but in the slums where filters are scarce and sickness is common, its message resonates. Ezrak preaches a doomsday prophecy predicting the planet's collapse. He could be a useful resource or a source of information about the lower levels of society, but his followers are unpredictable and dangerous. In the background, Sir Corvin Quinter, an Imperial knight and newly arrived on Nimluin. He comes as the Emperor's direct representative, dispatched in the wake of the sudden and mysterious death of Admiral Aldist Fenestrazi, retired, with whom Quinter once served. Officially, the Admiral's passing was ruled an industrial accident, but whispers speak of assassination. Quinter is a decorated veteran and former Marine colonel, uncompromising in his loyalty to the Imperium. His estate may be small compared to Caldera's or Andaris's, but his authority flows straight from the throne. He's been given a free hand to uncover the truth behind his friend's death and ensure Nimluin's loyalty, regardless of who he offends in the process. Over all of this looms the Navy. 2 Batrons of the 69th Fleet are stationed semi-permanently in Nimluin orbit, anchored to a massive naval base. A scout base operates alongside them, watching the endless stream of trade and tracking the political currents. The Navy is a visible presence. Its sailors fill the streets while on leave. Its patrol craft police orbital lanes. Its fleet consumes Nimluin's output. It is both protector and overseer. Life here reflects the planet's contradictions. In the slums and poorer districts, children cough through tainted air, while their parents labor in factories feeding imperial contracts. In the rich arcologies, air scrubbers provide crystal-clear skies under domes, where masks are fashion accessories rather than survival gear. Nimluiners are proud of their world's rise, proud to be an emerging industrial powerhouse of the core, yet they bristle under imperial oversight. Some look to Caldera for order, others to Andaris for progress, and a few to Ezrak's preaching of the apocalypse. Still others are resolved to look toward other skies altogether. The weight of Nimluin's billions has always been too much for the world to carry. For centuries, it sought to ease the pressure by sending its weakest and most unwanted away. Officially, these are resettlement initiatives, promising fresh starts and new lives on the frontier colonies. In truth, these relocation programs export the poor, the sick, the persecuted, and the unproductive to distant worlds of the core and beyond. The practice is a safety valve for Nimluin's strained society, masked as opportunity, freeing its factories and cities from mouths they cannot feed, shifting the burden from its own streets to those of other worlds. Outsiders arriving on Nimluin should expect a wary reception. To the oligarchs and nobles, travelers are useful only if they bring influence, skills, or connections. Otherwise, they're just another set of mouths to feed. To the middle class, visitors are curiosities, sometimes welcomed as fresh perspectives, but more often as distrusted meddlers in a world already stretched to the breaking point. In the slums, outsiders may be treated with open hostility, blamed for taking opportunities that should have gone to locals, or hounded for charity. The Navy and Imperial authorities see offworlders as potential tools or potential threats and watch them closely. Nimluine greets strangers with the same air as its poisoned sky, stifling, heavy, and suspicious, though opportunities still exist for those bold enough to grasp them. For a referee, Nimluine is a pressure cooker. It offers opportunities for intrigue, trade, and espionage. Nobles feud through proxies and agents. Industrial espionage runs rampant. Smuggling thrives in the gap between food imports and desperate need. The religious fringe may explode into violence at any moment. And the Navy's ever-present shadow means every local conflict risks becoming an imperial one. For travelers, Nimluine can be a patron or an antagonist, ally or enemy, a world where fortunes are made and lost. Here, under the tainted sky of a rising power, the Imperium's hand is firm, but not cruel. The nobles, ambitious, but not cartoon villains. And the future, uncertain, but full of possibility. Perhaps the travelers arrive on Nimluine as part of Sir Corvin Quinter's staff, and are there to aid him in his investigation of Admiral Fenestrazi's death. This would plant them firmly in the middle of the intrigue and maneuverings at play here, and fertile ground for multiple sessions. Keen-eared listeners will remember my mentioning of Nimluine back in episode 2 as part of Baron Laird Tenpenny's adventure seeds, and his burgeoning rivalry with Count Endaris for having lured away Helior Materials Group from Nimluine to Surma. So I wanted to include it here to help connect the dots of how my version of the core is taking shape with rivalries and corporate machinations. Here's a segment I'm calling Core Creatures, where we spotlight the strange and dangerous life of the core sector. Each entry looks at how a species survives, how locals see it, and how travelers might cross its path in play. Today's creature slithers through the poison vents of Nimluine, the Luminophidion, known to duct crews as the vent snake or duct eel. The Luminophidion is a ribbon-bodied reptile native to Nimluine. These urban-adapted scavengers grow to about 1 meter to 1.5 meters in length, with translucent scales that glow faintly with lines of bioluminescence. Originally cave dwellers, they've found a new niche in Nimluine's ducts, vents, and refuse shafts, where they've become an infamous feature of the planet's underlevels. Packs of them prowl the shadows, feeding on vermin, carrion, and waste organics. Their faint glow is an unsettling reminder that something is always moving in the dark. The species has adapted perfectly to Nimluine's poisoned air. They can metabolize toxins with ease, require little oxygen, and even use their glow to lure prey. In packs, they sometimes work together to harry larger targets. Their bites are painful and prone to infection, and those wounds can fester for weeks if untreated, making encounters with them dreaded even by hardened duct crews. They reproduce at startling pace, with females laying multiple clutches a year, each hatching dozens of young that reach maturity within months. Some biologists even claim to have observed parthenogenesis, self-replication without mates, which may explain the impossible density of their numbers. Whatever the truth, infestations always return, no matter how many times they're culled. For Nimluine's oligarchs and arcology dwellers, the duct eels are vermin. Their skins clog air filters, their coils startle workers, and their bites send the unlucky to hospital. But in the Undercities, the creatures have become a symbol of survival, living in the poisoned dark where people also struggle to endure. Their shed skins, however, have given them a more sinister role. When dried and smoked, the husks produce vivid hallucinations. What began as desperate escapism has become ritual for Izrakian sects who claim the visions are divine revelations. Outside the cult, gangs and smugglers have turned the skins into a cheap narcotic, fueling an illicit trade that winds through Nimluin's shadows. Harvesting the husks is risky work, though, since the reptiles only slough them off near their burrows, and they defend these places with lethal aggression. For travelers, the creatures might be encountered as vermin in service tunnels, dangerous in packs, or even as living symbols in cult shrines. More dangerously, they may be swept into the trade of shed skins, running afoul of smugglers, cultists, and criminal oligarchs who all have a stake in the narcotic. The drug spread has already caught the attention of Nimluin's security forces and even Imperial observers, raising the stakes of any involvement. What begins as a simple encounter in the underlevels can spiral quickly into smuggling, cult politics, or Imperial scrutiny. There are many ways this might play out in a game. Travelers could be hired to intercept smugglers moving duck-deal skins off-world, only to discover the smugglers are backed by one of Nimluin's powerful industrial factions. They might be drawn into an Ezrakian cult, offered a vision through smoked skins that could be true prophecy, or just bait for a trap. Perhaps they're called in to clear a hab block's life support ducts, only to discover that someone is protecting the infestation for their own profit. Or maybe the Navy approaches them quietly, asking them to trace the spread of the drug trade, fearing its corrosive effect on discipline. Success could earn Imperial favor. Failure could leave them caught between oligarchs, the cult, and smugglers. All right, folks. That's all for this episode of Signals from the Core. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform, and share with your fellow travelers as well. If you have questions, comments, or want to submit an idea for a future episode, you can reach out at coresignalsmail@gmail.com. Until next time, keep your clearance valid, your comms encrypted, and your gravline out of committee oversight. Stay sharp, travelers.